My first story of the night is not set in the depths of the ocean, but rather on the surface. This story was told to me by the captain of a ship I was on for research work. A good Aussie chap, he always had a good yarn or story to tell about life at sea. At the beginning of his career on the sea, he was the greenhorn on a commercial deep-sea fishing trawler. They mostly caught black cod, though a lot of other fish got caught in the net and discarded. He said that the deeper you laid your nets, the stranger the things you'd pull to the surface would be. Beyond a certain depth, the fish become inedible, their flesh transforming into a pale, gelatinous substance not long after reaching the surface. One night in particular, it seems, this crew set their nets too deep. As the nets raised out of the water, dripping wet and filled with pale wriggling flesh, it became apparent that something was wrong. The fish were screaming. The noise was unbearable. Some of the crew ran below deck and the rest put in earplugs. After some debate, they opened up the net on the deck to examine the fish. The captain swore that when they did, he saw fish with human faces. Distorted, corpulent, distended, but unmistakably human. And they were screaming. Pale blobs of flesh with a drooping face, fleshy nose and black eyes, wretchedly screaming in anger, pain or hate. They were quickly thrown overboard and the crew fished in shallower waters from that point onward. The next story is one of my own. Those of you who have been in previous threads might recall me talking about this briefly. I was doing a mixed gas dive to the bottom, which was 60 meters at this part of the lake. Mostly I was just looking for valuables or other odds and ends that had ended up at the bottom of the lake. When I was a kid, I lost a tooth on a boat trip. I think that was when my fascination with the deep began. My mind fixated on the idea of my tooth, sinking to the murky bottom and lying there. Lost to the depths, forever I enjoy finding those lost things and bringing them back to the surface. It's so rare that you can bring something tangible with you from the deep. On this particular day, I brought back with me something that was intangible, yet infinitely more valuable than any treasure. I still had over half my cylinder and was enjoying skimming over the lake floor, sifting through the sediment and whatever odds and ends had ended up there. Out of the blue, I had a powerful intuition that I was being watched. I turned around and saw a man standing there behind me on the ocean floor. He smiled at me broadly and waved his hand. That's when I recognized him, in a sort of stilted shock. I was face to face with my dead father on the lake floor, 60 meters below the surface. He pointed to my cylinder and said something, his face wrinkled with concern. Well, he tried to speak. When he opened his mouth, only bubbles came out and I couldn't understand what he was trying to say. He pointed again, directly at my oxygen regulator. It slowly dawned on me what was happening. My equipment was malfunctioning, giving me an improper mix of gases that at this depth can result in raptures of the deep, narcosis. At this point, I was aware of the fact that I was hallucinating. I should have started swimming back up immediately. But I couldn't. I had left so much unsaid to my father. He had died in a boating accident a few years before, and I hadn't ever really gotten over it. He was just there one moment and gone the next. I never said goodbye. You have certain regrets when someone dies, things left unsaid. I always mulled them over in my mind. I wish I'd said this. Why didn't I tell him that before I died? And I finally had a chance to tell him those things. To have that goodbye. But I couldn't speak, because of the stupid rebreather in my mouth. I started to rip off my mask and rebreather so I could talk to him, but he grabbed my hand. I yanked against him and tried to pull off my mask, but he wouldn't let me. Frustrated, I screamed into my mask, bubbles floating up around me in a stream up to the surface. And then, I felt him pull me into a hug. The kind he used to give me when I was a little kid. And in that instant, I just knew that he understood. That he knew. That this was him saying goodbye. When the bubbles cleared, he was gone. I swam back up the surface, spent a few minutes at my safety stop and then surfaced. I know it wasn't real, but it couldn't possibly be real. Besides, I don't believe in ghosts. I know I didn't really see my father, or my father's ghost down there. It was probably a manifestation of my subconscious desire or some shit. I'm not a psychologist. Even still, it's hard for me to not want to believe that it was real in some small way. That my mind was more open in that state and he reached out. I'm not sure why. I guess it's just that it felt like he was there. It felt like him. It felt so goddamn much like him. God, I miss him. This story is also one of my own. It happened in Hawaii during one of my many diving vacations. It's a damn beautiful place with great weather and even greater views underwater. While I can appreciate the dark, murky atmosphere at the bottom of a lake, there's definitely something enchanting about crystal clear water filled with colorful exotic fish. It's certainly much less frightening than any of my deep sea dives, especially the ones that involved me welding vital components for hours on end with even the smallest mistake having potentially devastating consequences. That, however, does not mean that it was not dangerous. You are always in danger underwater, whether you realize it or not. It is not your how. You don't live there. You don't belong there. And most importantly in the water, you are no longer the world's apex predator. You're in a much, much bigger pond. Keep that in mind. If you ever go diving yourself, it might just save your life. Even a small thing could kill you. In this case, it was a moray eel. Now morays are known for being vicious. But most people don't know that they're also very intelligent. I like to call them sea demons due to their disturbing combination of cold intellect and raw aggression. If one bites you, the best way to get it to let go is to cave its skull in. Otherwise, good luck getting it to let go. That in itself isn't unusual, but when it's paired with an uncanny intellect, it gets a little bit scary. This moray in particular was the king demon of all the sea demons. Not in size, he was about average for an older moray. What placed him above all the others was his pure dickishness. He tried to fucking cut my oxygen lines. I felt something tug at them violently, and I spun around to be face and face with this fucking dickhead. I could just see how fucking smug he was. That stupid fucking face. He knew what he was doing. And I knew that he knew, and he knew that I knew. So I pull out my knife that I keep for defense against sharks and cutting myself free if I ever get loose, and I show it to him. See, look, it's shiny. If I poke you with it, you die. He knew what that was too. He didn't seem worried, but he backed off a bit. I kept an eye on him the whole way back to shore. I swear the cunt performed the moray equivalent of flipping me off when he finally swam away as I was nearing the shore. Moral of the story: morays are cunts, don't fuck around with them.